I now recognize the ranking member of the Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties, the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Johnson, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to join all my colleagues today in thanking all of our witnesses sincerely for being here, and especially Mr. Floyd and Ms. Underwood Jacobs for making the trip in the midst of such tragedy and difficult circumstances to share your experiences with us. It's very valuable to us, and we're grateful. Of course, you have our condolences and our profound sadness for your losses. And I and my family and the community of faith that I represent have been praying for you and will continue to do that. We're going to talk about policing practices and reforms today, and that's a really important topic. But since this is the first full committee hearing that we've had in judiciary since the tragic death of Mr. Floyd, I think it's also important for us to acknowledge here in the beginning what's believed by so many to be a root cause of the persistent challenges we face together as a country, and that is the need for authentic reconciliation in our communities. Everyone here understands the plain and simple truth that racism in any form violates the most fundamental principles of our great nation and the rules of our Creator. The central idea of America, let's not forget, is the idea that we boldly declare the self-evident truth that all men are created equal and that they're thus endowed by God with the same inalienable rights. Because each of us is made in the image of God, there are very serious implications that come from that. Among them is the idea that every single person has inestimable dignity and value. And our value is not related in any way to the color of our skin or what zip code we live in or what we can contribute to society or anything else. Our value is inherent because it comes to us by our Creator. Any fool who contends he has some sort of natural right of supremacy over his neighbor violates not only the foundational creed of America, but the greatest commandments of the God who made him. And if we can ever learn to see one another as God does, I think it'll solve a lot of our problems. This unspeakable act of cruelty that America witnessed in Minneapolis has opened an important new dialogue on reform. And while policing has always been regarded as an inherently local function, we do agree that Congress has a key role to play in ensuring that abuses are not tolerated and can never happen again. Justice has to be swift, and bad police officers have to be held accountable for their actions. But at the same time, we want to be careful to recognize, as all my colleagues have this morning, that officers like the ones involved in the death of George Floyd are not representative of the vast majority of America's law enforcement officers. Most are faithful, self-sacrificing public servants who put their lives on the line every single day to protect and serve our communities. We need to honor that, and we need to recognize and empower those law enforcement officers, which is precisely the opposite of the radical, dangerous proposals we're seeing right now to defund them. A government of, by, and for the people must be a nation of law and order, and public safety, of course, is the key to maintaining our republic. Without that, things like the rioting, looting, and violence that has led to the destruction of cities and minority-owned businesses, ironically, would prevail over the valuable, peaceful protests that are intended to bring about meaningful change. There's a consensus among every member of this committee, Democrat and Republican, that there are solutions we can work towards that will restore faith in our institutions and build trust in our communities. From where we sit right now, we believe the most actionable reforms must focus around three core concepts to simplify it: transparency, training, and termination of those rare bad apples in law enforcement who violate the law and the legitimacy that upholds the character of our legal system. This common ground is key if we're going to accomplish the goal of keeping our communities safe, upholding the civil liberties of individuals, and protecting the legitimacy of law enforcement. None of these goals that I've outlined today are mutually exclusive, of course. We can and should clearly condemn the senseless violence we've seen and all causes of it, from a few bad apples wearing a badge to the bad actors and anarchists sparking riots and destruction in our streets. At the same time, we can work together on meaningful reforms and real results while upholding the respect and appreciation that is due to every American patriot who faithfully serves us on the thin blue line. I have faith that we can work together as a committee. This is a bipartisan concern, and we'll have bipartisan solutions, I hope. For the future of our country and for generations of Americans to come, we have to do that. I urge my colleagues in this moment, all of us, to hear and to listen to our witnesses and work with each other as friends and fellow Americans to understand the need in our communities and foster our discussions on a foundation of civility and mutual respect. We've started that, and I hope we can continue it. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Without objection, all other opening statements